All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. The New York Mets do not have a long-standing reputation of being a successful franchise, as they've been more of a comedy of errors than anything else. Now, if the Mets were Lucy, then their fans would be Charlie Brown because they find themselves consistently suckered into kicking the football, or in this case, hoping that this team will be any good. It's been about 4 years since Steve Cohen became the majority owner of the Mets, as the man with the deep pockets was supposed to be the one who was going to wash away the stench left on this franchise by the Wilpons. But nearly 4 years later, are the Mets any better on Cohen's watch than they were with that of Fred and Jeff Wilpon? That's the $1 million question right now. You look at the Mets, and I know that they're tied currently tonight with the Arizona Diamondbacks, two apiece as we speak. But this team is steamrolling to their third losing season in 4 years under Cohen. Last year, the Mets were the worst team that money could buy, as their MLB record payroll didn't exclude them from losing 87 games and finishing in fourth place in the National League East. And this year, we're not even at the month of June yet, and the breaks are already coming off of this team. The Mets coming into play today have dropped 19 out of their last 23, as they're now 22 and 23. And only the Colorado Rockies and Miami Marlins have a worse record than the Mets right now in the National League. The Mets are a rudderless ship. And for me, I'm going to start with the blame with the locker room. And the reason why I say this, there's no on-field leadership on this team. Who on this current 25-man roster right now can realistically be viewed as a leader? They don't have any leaders. You look at so many issues with this team. I mean, the Jorge Lopez fiasco from yesterday, which resulted in him getting DFA'd. You think about how the things have just come apart for Edwin Diaz. The lackadaisical press conferences by multiple players on this team. Last year, all of the blame, or the bulk of the blame, was thrust into the lap of now former manager Buck Showalter. You can't say that anymore. Okay, Buck to me was not the problem then, and clearly Buck ain't the problem now. And even the new manager Carlos Mendoza, I don't feel that he is the problem either. Okay, you look at it like this. Yes, Cohen has shown a willingness to spend money. Okay, and I tip my hat to him for that. But he's also been betrayed for the most part by the guys that he spent the money on. What has Francisco Lindor done, since he got that big haul of Cohen's money? Same thing can be said about the likes of Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo. You think about the Max Scherzer fiasco. Justin Verlander was only there for a cup of coffee last year. You look at Edwin Diaz, he is a shell, okay, of what he was in 2022 before he hit free agency. And then, of course, this guy has not been the same since the World Baseball Classic last year. You look at Pete Alonso. For one, I expected Pete to have a big year this year as he was heading into free agency, and it has not been the case. And, he probably came into this, probably going to go into the offseason looking to get at least $200 million. But the way he's playing right now, I don't see that being possible. At least, let me say it from the standpoint, unless a team is desperate to get him, I don't see anybody going out there and giving him 200 million the way that he's playing right now. For me, in my opinion, what I think the Mets should do, plain and simple at this point, is give the young guys a chance. Give them an opportunity to go out there and play. Why? Because they're the ones who are hungry. You think about it. The Mets brought in David Stearns to be their president of baseball operations. And, in his time working in MLB front offices, he's built a reputation, with small market clubs like the Milwaukee Brewers, being able to do more with less. And I think right now, it's truly time for the Mets to, have a no frills approach, because You look at it like this. You look at this division. All right. The Phillies and Braves are light years ahead of the Mets. The Mets aren't even in their league, theoretically speaking. The rebuilding Washington Nationals have already surpassed the Mets in the standings. And I think as an organization, the Nationals are a step or two above the Mets anyway. And then you look at the Miami Marlins, who, even after that bad start that they had to this season, they're only 3 games behind the Mets right now. And the Marlins find themselves rebuilding as well. So before you blink, maybe we have a situation where Miami surpasses the Mets, and we're talking about the fifth worst team, or the fifth best team rather, in this division. It's one of those where, I think at this point, I know we're still in May, but maybe, just maybe, the Mets should start looking to see, what valuable trade assets that they have, and just try to, at this point, just even focus on 2025. I'll bring up the question: should the Mets look to shop Pete Alonso? A year ago, I would not have said this, but right now, I'm going to say yes. And the reason is this: the Mets cannot afford to get stuck with another bad contract like they already have. And in the case of Pete Alonso, I know that he's a fan favorite, in Queens. I totally get it. But the Mets can finish in fourth place without him, because they've already proven that they can finish in fourth place with him. Okay. So maybe, like I said, at the end of the day, just start this thing over, and, just try to figure it out from there and go forward. Steve Cohen, I'm going to say this. It wasn't, and it hasn't been a complete, let me come in with a bag of money and just try to buy a championship. It has not been that case, but he has spent money, and it really, really hasn't worked out. The first big mistake, I think, for Steve Cohen was the Francisco Lindor deal. You made the trade with Cleveland. I get it. You wanted to have a star player, um, to try to bring some relevance to your team. I totally get, the appeal, the effort, and it has not worked out. And he spent money on Scherzer, he spent money on Verlander, bringing back Nemo, bringing back McNeil, the Diaz contract. It has not worked out so far. So I think these are some bumps in the road, for a first time owner of a sports franchise. And I just really think that the Mets really, at this point, just need to destroy and rebuild, and try to build this thing from the ground up. It's one of those, you look at the Mets, it's still May. I get it. You have the expanded postseason now. So theoretically, they're not out of it, but the Mets have a lot of things that they have to do right that they have not been doing right so far. Better hitting, better pitching, just better execution. You look at it like this. I mean, they got swept in that doubleheader a couple of days ago at the hands of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Only 7 hits in both games. That ain't gonna cut it. You just think about how this bullpen has been imploding recently, and at the end of the day, they've been overworked because the Mets don't have starters who can consistently go deep into games. Luis Severino has been pitching better in the rotation. Maybe it's time to put him on the market. Anybody who is of any value, I think you got to really think about it if you're the Mets. It's unfortunate because it's the same old Mets. It's the same old losing culture. And I know that there's a fan base out there that has been hopeful that, the arrival of Steve Cohen could change things, because of so many years of damage with the Wilpons. It could happen, yes, okay, but it's going to take some time, and I think it's going to take more time than what the Mets fans really wanted it to be, and I think it's going to take more time than what Cohen wanted it to be, and what he expected it to be. I'll tell you like this: if you're a Met fan, you've been waiting since 1986. You can wait a couple more years to try to get this ship righted. At the end of the day, the expectations weren't overly high for the Mets this year. It's not like they were expected to go to the World Series, but the fact that this team has been losing games in the fashion that they have, I know that it was a make or, you don't want to use make or break, but it seems like it was a make or break scenario earlier this month with that 7 game stretch against the Braves and Phillies. The Mets clearly failed the test. They went 2-5, but they have not recovered since then. And some of the strengths of this team have not been there. The bullpen, go back to the series against the Marlins, the issues against the Guardians, the Giants, and it's just right down the list. And this team just can't get out of their own way. So it's May. Like we're almost basically at the end of May. But I think if you're a Met fan, you got to start thinking about next season at this point. If you're a Met fan that follows either the Jets or Giants in the New York area, well, I got news for you. Training camps will be open in about 6 weeks or so. But nonetheless, things ain't looking good for the Mets in Queens. And I really don't know if there is an end in sight. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.